This week, using search to search for COVID. Tick-tock, tick-tock, time for school. Breaking new ground with The Last of Us Part 2. And it's time for us all to hit record. Welcome to Click. Come on in, everyone. I hope you're well. And ladies and gentlemen, I give you Lara Lewington.
Hello, Spencer, and hello, everyone. There have been rumours that over the past few weeks, some of our viewers have fallen in love with two things. I'm sorry, Spencer, it's not you and me, but it is the picture on your wall and your cushions. And I believe that those cushions took on a whole life of their own last week.
Yeah, all right. Okay, so here's what happens. I don't know why, but I asked for suggestions on social media for a different arrangement than the usual rainbow that we have here. And there was one suggestion I got that I just thought was genius and I could not resist. So well done if you worked out what was going on. This was the progress of the cushions moving about throughout the programme. And this was the homage that we were paying. All I can say is I'm sorry.
Clearly lockdown has been long.
It certainly has. Now, listen, you know how it is, right? A question pops into your head, and for most of us, what we do is go online and type that question into a search engine. More often than not these days, that search engine is Google. In fact, Google is so massive and can see so much that it can provide anyone with a good idea of what is trending right now. And scientists are now investigating whether searches for particular medical problems could be used to predict a second spike in cases of COVID-19. In the UK, searches for loss of taste and smell were peaking before the lockdown and long before those symptoms were announced as being linked to the disease.
So our models that we have developed using online search data were peaking about 17 days before confirmed cases of COVID-19 were peaking in 8 countries that we have analyzed. And therefore, based on this observation, we thought that if this is to happen again, we may get an early warning based on online searches.
But trying to unlock what search tells us about the progress of a disease is much more complex than just finding out what the most popular search terms are. For example, there was a second peak of searches for loss of taste and smell, but that was after they were announced as official symptoms. Dr. Lampos analysed thousands of search terms and found that it's not just the obvious ones that can be used to spot outbreaks. And it's not even the most obvious people who are able to spot them. Patrick Berlinkett is not a researcher. He's a marketeer. And he doesn't use the Google Trends tool. He uses something that's even more powerful. Google Ads.
So in the last 7 to 14 days, there's been an increase in positive case rates in the Sunbelt states in the United States. Arizona, I've seen a 400% increase in anosmia search terms. South Carolina, I'm seeing a 300% increase. On the other hand, there's been a drop in the last 7 to 14 days in Michigan. The correlation is exact between the increases and the decreases that have happened.
So right now, what is your research telling you about where we might see an increase in cases next?
So one area that stands out is definitely Houston, where I'm seeing a 3x increase in search volume for anosmia starting June 1st.
Is there a strong chance people are just searching for those symptoms because they've heard about it in the news rather than they've got it themselves?
So I can see the word-for-word searches that do correlate with the keyword. People are literally entering terms like, I can't smell since Tuesday, what do I do? I lost my sense of taste and smell, what does that mean? I see those kind of searches. I don't see anything that would tell me that these searchers know what anosmia is. They've heard it in the news.
And there are some parts of the world where there's very little official health data available, where search data is flagging up some interesting anomalies.
Tanzania, where John Magufuli, the president, is one of the few leaders around the world who is still denying the seriousness of COVID. By analysing searches for loss of smell symptoms, we're able to form a strong hypothesis that actually there are many more cases of COVID in Tanzania than the official statistics from John Magufuli's government are suggesting.
And in fact, search engine analysis has even suggested which government measures may have had the greatest impact on the outbreak.
We see that, for example, the social distancing measures, as well as the lockdowns that followed them in most countries, were effective. And in some countries, we also see that social distancing measures alone would have been effective. So we see that there was the trend was in decline a little bit before, like 1 or 2 days before the application of lockdowns. So one would argue that maybe severe lockdowns were not necessarily the best course of action. But again, we cannot be sure about that.
Public Health England now includes UCL's findings in their response to COVID-19. It is important to remember, though, that this is relatively new research with the potential to get it wrong. But when it's used with more conventional methods, it's looking like it can be a powerful tool.
Wow, that was really incredible stuff. Now, Spencer, I've got an important question for you. TikTok, huge platform, hundreds of millions of users making short-form, quirky videos. Have you ever made one?
No. I have been watching it with interest, though, but I don't know about you, but the problem for me is that just when I start understanding a new social media platform, start understanding the language and start gaining followers, along comes another social platform. And it's almost like there is a new platform for each new generation. Parents, that's why your kids aren't on Facebook, because you are.
True, and that's probably why when I made this video for TikTok last year, I realised I wasn't really in the right place.
It was a true work of art, it has to be said. What's funny though is even that song and that dress are completely culturally irrelevant to anyone who's under the age of 20.
Absolutely. I did feel at the time I had to be totally and utterly shameless though, but things could be changing as TikTok may be becoming a little more serious. Browsing can admittedly be quite compelling, but making content left me wanting to hide under the table. TikTok's popularity has rocketed once again in lockdown, but it's not just about the fun. Now the platform's got a really captive audience, it's time for them to learn. Whilst its emphasis on fun and entertainment over news or politics had made it a welcome distraction during the pandemic, this week TikTok is announcing a new strategic direction with the education-focused feature Learn on TikTok.
Going forward, Learn on TikTok is going to be a long-term program, which is about us investing in partners and content creators from across the breadth of professional content creators, educational institutions like English Heritage and Cambridge University, all the way through to the breadth of creators who exist on TikTok. We're working with some kind of more educationally focused partners, so Cambridge University is one of those. So there are some, for either school age or university or postgraduate age, but a lot of the content will be much more focused, that will be focused on life skills and things that are interesting to people.
And how are you going to deliver that education? Because presumably it's going to be in short, bite-sized chunks in the same way that any TikTok video is presented.
We think this is about applying the power of TikTok to learning. And what I mean by that is it's about effects, it's about audio, it's about engaging transitions, using all the tools that make TikTok videos so engaging and fun.
Amongst TikTok's partners is English Heritage, a charity that manages hundreds of historic sites in the UK and can see the importance of reaching a younger audience through social media.
We think that TikTok's a really safe place to explore some of the stories that perhaps matter most to young people, so things like Black history, for example, LGBTQ stories from some of our sites, women's history as well. It feels like a very safe, welcoming environment to explore those stories.
This is reminding me of YouTube's journey. Both platforms started off being all about viral video, all about the fun. And gradually as time went by, a lot of YouTube's content became more structured, more produced. And could it be that TikTok is going to start to push that sort of content too? Until then, I'm sure we can all learn something useful. Or not.
Hello and welcome to the Week in Tech. It was the week that India launched a new website to track healthcare supplies in real time for the COVID-19 pandemic, and Facebook announced plans to allow its American users to turn off political adverts in the run-up to the 2020 US election. It was also the week that Kuwait and Bahrain's contact tracing apps came under scrutiny from the human rights group Amnesty International after users said that their location and near location data was being traced. Norway has also had to halt its track and trace app over data protection concerns, deleting all gathered data so far and suspending further use. Apple revealed that $500 billion was traded in the App Store economy throughout 2019. The company said they did not take any commission from more than 85% of those transactions. Children in the US can now play video games with a prescription. US Food and Drug regulators approved the first medically prescribed video game for kids between the age of 8 and 12 who have inattentive or combined type ADHD. And finally, if you're returning to the zoo this week, make sure you keep your eyes out for any robotic creatures. The Sloth Bot is a robot designed by engineers at the Georgia Institute of Technology that takes its inspiration from the low-energy lifestyle of real sloths. Powered by solar energy, the bot will monitor animals and enclosure conditions over longer periods of time.
If you fancy a spot of escapism right now, then the chances are it's not by playing a video game set in the midst of a global pandemic. And it's for that reason that the launch of Part 2 of The Last of Us, the massively successful genre-defining game, was delayed. But then a spoiler was released online, and that meant, pandemic or no pandemic, it needed to be released. It's received critical acclaim, but does it live up to the hype? Mark Chislak's been finding out.
25 years after a devastating global pandemic, nature reclaims the earth. Buildings lie empty. The wreckage of the world before surrounds you. Inside every derelict shop, every creepy basement, danger lurks. Either from other survivors, or from humans afflicted with a fungal infection that reduces them to flesh-eating monsters.
The world of The Last of Us Part 2 is not a happy place. In creating a sequel to one of the most critically acclaimed games of all time, its developers, Naughty Dog, have crafted a grim and sometimes unsettling game. One which often challenges the player to think about violence and its corrosive effect.
I think The Last of Us, the original game, is so well regarded because it did something new. It was really defining what a PS3 game at the time looked like in terms of visual definition, in terms of fidelity, in terms of realism. But then on top of that, it laid on this human story of parenthood, of discovering what it is to love again and to be protective.
The player controls Joel in the vast majority of the first game. This time around, Ellie takes centre stage. Where the last game was essentially an epic road trip which becomes an examination of paternal love and the lengths one will go to preserve it, the sequel is concerned with revenge and the unhealthy effect it has on everything it touches. The game's narrative lead, Hallie Gross's background is in film and TV, notably writing for HBO's Westworld.
And I remember when I sat down with Neil Druckmann 4 years ago and he pitched me what the story would be, it was trying to make a conversation about empathy, make a conversation about tribalism, and how we can really change our perspective when we're walking in somebody else's shoes.
This time round, Ellie's quest takes her to a ruined Seattle, a city divided by human factions, as well as the infected. Scavenging for supplies and equipment as well as crafting improvised weapons is crucial to survival. The player is always outnumbered or outgunned, so listening out for enemies, a cunning use of distraction, and a stealthy approach to combat are key.
This game really is very violent indeed, so it's no surprise it carries a
PEGI 18.
But all that violence and gore does serve a purpose. It helps reinforce some of the game's themes, pushing the player to think about their actions while they're playing the game.
It's the kind of thing you would see in a fairly extreme horror movie or an extreme thriller. And the thing that makes The Last of Us quite interesting is that it interrogates that violence a lot. It interrogates the motivation behind that violence a lot. And that makes it quite uncomfortable to play. It makes it a challenging experience to play because you're not always having fun.
We also want to make you understand that every choice in this world, sort of like every choice in life, has a cost. So if we made that violence feel quote unquote fun, you're losing the cumulative impact on all of our characters as they exist in this world.
I think they should be terrified of me.
With an ethnically diverse cast, a trans character, and a gay relationship between Ellie and new character Dina, this title also reflects a more diverse world than video games usually present.
So we absolutely did want to represent the culture we see around us right now. We see LGBTQ culture in our everyday life. That was important to us, you know?
The game had already had its launch delayed by the real-world COVID-19 pandemic when a spoiler-filled leak emerged online.
Which included gameplay footage, key plot points, and potentially the game's ending.
There had been some speculation that it was some disgruntled developer at Naughty Dog themselves, or even that it was some kind of publicity stunt, but that wasn't the case at all.
I don't think takes away from the experience at all. And in fact, a lot of people have said it's as much as they think they know what's happening in the game, they really don't.
Sony is now saying that none of the developers at Naughty Dog or any of its own staff were responsible for the leak. The first time around, The Last of Us changed what a lot of people thought was possible as far as storytelling in games is concerned. The Last of Us Part 2 continues to push that envelope.
I don't care.
But don't expect the experience to be a cheery one.
Worst.
That was Mark. Now, the video games industry is obviously doing a lot better than the movie industry at the moment, which has been massively disrupted by the coronavirus pandemic. Hardly anything is being filmed and cinemas have been closed too.
You know what you need to do.
Films like Wonder Woman 1984, Black Widow and No Time to Die have all had their release dates pushed back to later in the year.
James Bond.
So you're not dead.
Hello, Q, I've missed you.
And it's estimated that the global film industry has already lost over $10 billion US. But it's not just the big screen that's been affected. Recently, I spoke to Inception and Dark Knight Rises star Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who was just 3 weeks into filming a new TV show when it was shut down due to the coronavirus.
It was frustrating to have to stop that. But of course, my frustration very soon turned to, oh, I have nothing to complain about. There's really a lot of struggle going on right now, and I'm one of the very, very lucky ones in this situation.
All right, we're recording, everybody. I'm home.
With Hollywood on pause, he turned his attention online.
So we're all gonna make a show together, starting now. You can come be a part of it. It's gonna be a 6-part miniseries, 10-minute episode.
A long time ago, I started a community online with my brother called Hit Record, which has evolved into this big collaborative environment. The whole premise of Hit Record is about people making things together. So people start projects and they find collaborators and they finish those projects together. And, you know, it could be hundreds of people work on a project together, or it could be just a few.
And for Joseph, it's taken on an even greater meaning in a world where we've all been forced apart.
I think a lot of us are turning online looking for human connection, but oftentimes the interactions you get online are sort of quick, scatterbrained, disposable. You know, social media can be that way. And when you're making something together with someone else, the interaction you get tends to be more nuanced, more profound, more long-lasting. You have a common purpose. You're like, let's figure this out together. Let's make a thing together. And so Hit Record has really provided something that I think a lot of us have needed, me included.
To be special forces?
Yes, sir.
Why do you want to join the CIA?
I'd like to help my country make a difference in the world.
In 2016, Joseph took on the role of famed NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden. It was an experience that left a lasting impression.
Deputy director of the NSA offered me a new position.
Can you tell me anything about it?
You know I can't.
The kind of democratization that social media gives us, the fact that now, you know, people are able to get their ideas, their creative ideas out there. Do you think that people are tending towards those likes and those clicks and those follows? Is that kind of focusing in the wrong way the type of content that people are putting out there?
I think the biggest problem is actually the way that some of these companies make money with the technology, the business model, as they say, that they offer a service for free in exchange for the right to kind of spy on people, collect massive amounts of data. I do think there's something kind of poisonous about that to creativity, when right at the seed of your creation, you're like, well, how many followers is that going to get me? Is that going to do well on Twitter? Is that going to get a lot of likes? Like, these aren't the questions you ideally want to be asking yourself in the thick of your self-expression.
But with COVID-19 still dominating our lives and social distancing becoming part of the new normal, just how difficult will it be for Hollywood to restart TV and film production?
There's so many question marks, it's really hard to say. Well, like, one way that movies are moving towards is shooting with more kind of virtual sets, whether that's on green screen or that's shooting in front of these massive LED walls, and motion capture, all these new technologies, ways to make movies that are different than the conventional way where you go to a location and you shoot in a location. This will probably push that forward, I would guess. But yeah, we will all still find ways to shoot in the old-fashioned way as well. And will there be less stuff being made? I don't know. Everyone's pretty keen to keep making stuff. Certainly you're gonna see some kind of dip reflected by the fact that we all had to stop for the last couple months.
Joe, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. It's been
Thank you. Great to be here.
It was fascinating to chat to Joe, and if you go to our YouTube channel, you can see a longer cut of our chat where he talked about what it was like to meet Edward Snowden and how Russian bots tried to take down Star Wars. I kid you not, it's well worth checking out. That is it for this week, though.
Yes, as ever, you can find the team on social media, on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook and Twitter at BBC Click.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.